We're going to be creating a document using Microsoft Word. The type of document that I'd like you to create is a flyer. In this example, I have a flyer which has certain elements. The flyer is advertising surfing lessons, so there's an image that is relevant to the subject matter, the name or type of lessons, some kind of a subhead or subtitle that reveals a little bit more information that would pull in a potential customer, a bulleted list of features, things that are being offered, further information that might anticipate some questions that a potential customer might have, the name of the fictional business, some information like your student name, days of the week and hours that these lessons would be offered, and some contact information, in this case a phone number, but phone number plus email address would be good. Phone number is the minimum. So a few student examples. We have a flyer for piano lessons, a flyer for sword fighting lessons using toy swords, and a flyer for knitting lessons. So let's go ahead and start. So we're going to go ahead and open up Microsoft Word. If it's not in your doc, you can go to Spotlight Search, and I already have mine searched, but you would go ahead and type in the name or start typing in the name, and the software name should come up. Double click it. Word will open. When Word opens, you should get this window that has some options here. You can create a new blank document. You can also use some of these pre-made templates. So in Word 2016, there's quite a few, quite a variety of templates to use. Some of them are for business forms, resumes, things like that. If you would want to use a template for a flyer, what you could do is type in the search box, just type in flyer, and you'll get templates that are related to different types of subject matter. So the newest version of Word has a lot of variety and a lot of different choices. If you were to type in sale flyer, you would get options specific to that. It would narrow it down a little bit. Let's go ahead and click on one of these flyers. Okay, so a template is a document that has some formatting already applied to it, and it's meant to save time. So these are professionally designed, and they're provided by Microsoft, and there's certainly nothing wrong with using a pre-made template that's been professionally designed. In the case of the newest templates in the newer version of Word, most of the elements on the page are set up using a table. And a table is a type of element in Word that is set up using cells. So similar to Microsoft Excel, where you have a spreadsheet with a variety of cells in which you enter information, each element on this page is set up embedded inside of its own separate cell. So that actually makes it quite difficult to modify. These are meant to just replace the image. It's possible you might want to go ahead and just use the same image if you have some kind of event that would that the image would fit, but you can certainly go ahead and click the existing image, delete it, go ahead and replace that image with a picture of your own. Choose picture from file, a picture that you have saved on your desktop. So in the case of the sidebar here, we can click on a group of text and it's automatically highlighted. It's hard to see because the highlight's green and the background is green, but if we were just to go ahead and type, you see it just automatically replaces the default information with our own. But it's really hard to reformat this because of the way that Microsoft has the elements embedded into templates. We can't really, well, we can grab this and move it, but we don't have a lot of control. So what I would like you to do is create your own custom design. And I provided a template from a previous version of Microsoft that is a little bit easier to manipulate and modify. So inside Blackboard in the assignment folder, right above the example, there's a link to a sale flyer document that you can download. So let's go ahead and download that. I'll open it. And we have our template. So my concept is for the surf lessons. And the first thing we would want to do is to find some kind of an image that would be appropriate for our project, something that would communicate the message. So since I'm offering surfing lessons, I would want to find an image of somebody surfing. So there's a default image here, and we can just delete that. And I need to go and find some sort of a image that I can use in my document. So if I go to the web and I go to Google Images, and I type in surfing, I find all kinds of images of big waves and people surfing. So I should be able to click on any of these images and enlarge them and go to View Image. And if I right click, I can choose Save Image As. This is not the image that I want to use. We need to be aware of the pixel dimensions of the image. So this one is 728 by 455. That's a little bit small for our purposes. We don't want to get an image that's too small that we have to enlarge a lot, or we'll end up with an image that looks kind of that will look pixelated and not very sharp. So I would recommend finding an image that's no smaller than 1024 by 768 pixels. If you hover over any of these images, you can see that the pixel dimensions are displayed. Some are very small, some are very large. The reason for that is because this is just a general search. Type in surfing and go to Google Images, and it's just going to bring up every image in its database, that no matter what the size. So we can refine our search a little bit. We can go to Tools and go to Size and choose Large, and that will narrow down our search to only large images. So now if I hover over these images, you can see that the pixel dimensions are in the thousands generally. So now I know that I've got an image that I can use. It's going to be large enough. I would avoid any images that already have type over the top of them. I don't want you to use anyone else's type. I'd like you to create your own. So I'm just going to choose an image that I think might work in my flyer. This one looks pretty good. This is really large. I'll go ahead and right click, go to Save Image As, For right now, I'm going to save this image to my desktop. Sometimes these images have really long names. Maybe I'll just rename it surfing. It's JPEG format, which is fine. I'll hit save. I'm going to go back to Word, back to my template. Go ahead and choose Insert, Pictures, Picture from File. Select Surfing JPEG, and it drops right into my document. Before I go any farther, I'm going to save my document. And I want to check to see how I am supposed to save this, what the file naming convention is. So this is going to be called my last name Word Flyer. So let's go ahead and do that. Go to File, Save As, and type in your last name Word Flyer, and then we need to search for the assignment folder that we created earlier. And mine is it's on my desktop. Here's the assignment folder. Find the Word folder inside of there, double click it, and go ahead and save. So you're saving your Word flyer inside of your assignment folder. There it is. Okay, so going back to our document, a couple things I would like to do. I'd like to enlarge this image, and I'd like to make the image bleed off of the top and side edges so that I don't have a border here. I might also need to put some type over it, but you notice that if I try to move this image around, it doesn't really move. It keeps bouncing back to its previous position, which makes it really hard to manipulate. If I enlarge it, if I try to click and drag from the side, it bounces down here. So this kind of brings up the subject that Word is really not the ideal page layout program. In fact, I would only use Word to design a page if it's a very simple flyer, very quick job, or if there's some other reason that you couldn't use a professional page layout software such as InDesign. It's really kind of a last resort if you're working for a client that has something already designed in Word, or it's something that needs to be modified by a secretary who doesn't have access to or skill in professional design software. Then Word is kind of, you might need to do that, but it's really not very user friendly in terms of design. So nonetheless, we're going to design our flyer using Word. So in order to make our image easier to manipulate, we need to change a few things. So I'm choosing my image. I'm going to right click and go to Size and Position and click on Text Wrapping and choose Behind Text, and then go to Position and choose Alignment for both, Relative Position for both horizontal and vertical. Let's uncheck Layout in a table cell and move Object with Text, and then just hit OK. And now when I move my image, it's cooperating. So now I can just move it around. So I would like my image again to bleed, so I'm going to move it a little bit off the edges. Shift, click and drag on the side, and our image is large enough that I can enlarge this quite a bit and it still retains its sharpness and detail. So that looks fairly good. I think I actually want to enlarge this a little bit more like that. And I can adjust this, I can drag it around and move it, zoom in or out as needed. I'm using a principle of design called the 2/3, 1/3 rule. So the image is taking about up approximately 2/3 of my page, and then the written text information will take up approximately 1/3. I'm not measuring; it's not exact, but it's sort of a pleasing proportion, and it's something that you might want to keep in mind. Now I'm going to replace some of this text. So instead of the spring sale, instead of the spring sale, I'm going to go ahead and click on that text box and type in surfing lessons. And for this subhead, I'm going to type in no experience necessary. Okay, so we also have this element here. It's just a rectangle, a background color. We can modify that as well. We can stretch it out. We can change the dimensions of this. We can select, well, one of the things I'd like to do is put this type at an angle, and it's going to stay inside of this color bar. So what I did is I selected the colored box, I selected outside of the text, and there's a little symbol with a curled arrow that indicates that if I click and drag that, it's going to rotate. If I hold the Shift key as I rotate, it's going to lock the rotation to 45-degree increments, or actually like I think 10-degree increments, but it locks it to set increments. Or if I let go of Shift, it lets me drag it smoothly to customize it. So I'd like to put my color bar at an angle like this. The problem that I'm having is that the text didn't follow along with that, and I'd like the text to also be angled to fit inside of this this ribbon. So if I click on the text box and then hold Shift and also click on the colored background, and then I go ahead and I rotate, they'll rotate together. Oops. So I have a situation where the background, the image is peeking out from this background. It doesn't really look too good. I'd like to hide these irregular edges. So I'm going to do a few adjustments here. So I'm going to resize, let's see. I'll just make this band a little bit wider. So if I double click the text box, and you can see there's a box around the text when I hover over it, I get some text options, and when I click again, I have my blinking cursor in here that I can go ahead and click and select the text. Now, it's just temporarily losing my angle while I'm editing, but as soon as I'm finished, it'll go back to the angle that I had originally set it at. I'm going to go to Home, and I've got some font options here. I'm going to go ahead and choose a larger size, and I'm going to let's see, I'll just go ahead and choose bold, and make sure I'm just enlarging or widening the text box so that all the text will fit. If I hold the down arrow key, or if I press the down arrow key, every time I press it, the text, the object that I have selected is moving a little bit of an increment. So I'd like to change the color of my red background. In order to do that, I'm going to click on that element, take a look at the fill options, go to the color little paint bucket, and choose a color. So I'm looking for an ocean sea foam kind of a color. Here's one that I created ahead of time. The way I did that is I went to the more colors option, and I chose, I used the slider to choose a color. Go back, and here's the new one that I just created. So I'm going to use the one that I created previously. Now we need to set the other type. So I have white type and it's really hard to see, so if I double click that, select the text inside, and I can change the color up here in the home field. Change it to black. No, I think I want to make that a color also. Let's go and make this a nice blue color. The name of the store is going to be Big Kahuna Surf Shop. And I'll make that the same kind of blue. Oops, bold. So this is Century Gothic. I'm going to look for a different font. So what I'd like you to do is to change the font. Let's try Futura. So I'll go with Futura Bold. And let me change the font also for the headline. Okay, and that changed the way that the headline will fit in the text box, so I might have to make some adjustments. I'll make the text just a bit smaller. I've got my color bar behind the text. So let's go ahead and change that fill also to our seafoam blue. I'm going to type my name in. So you need to have your name. We're going to type in the hours and the days that these lessons are being offered. And I'm going to type in a phone number. Obviously, a fictional phone number. I'm going to get rid of the, I don't need the date. I'm going to angle these elements also to match the angle of the previous. Okay, now I've spent quite a bit of time formatting the body of my flyer and just refining the positions of the type and the elements. If you have any difficulty with moving any of these elements, or the elements such as these colored boxes or the text staying in position, try this. Click on the object, right click, choose more layout options, and go to relative position instead of absolute. The absolute is the default, but it tends to limit the flexibility of the way that the objects can be moved around, and that might help a bit. So there's a few things that we're still missing. We're missing the bulleted list. We still have this default text here, and we're also missing just a few refinements that I would like to show you. So for the bulleted list, I typed a list into a new Word document, and I had to invent my features of the lesson. So I just made these up. I'm copying and pasting by clicking and dragging over all of the text, or you can also choose Command A to select all, Command C to copy, go back over to your flyer document, double click on the dummy text that's already there, and press Command V to paste in the new text, and it probably won't all fit, so then what you can do is drag these nodes to adjust the size of your text box. And we still need our bullets for our list, so I'm going to choose Command A to select all, go up to the text options and choose bullets for bulleted list, and that just gives me a default list. I can make some further refinements. My bullets are a little bit farther away from the text than I'd like. There's a gap in here, so I'm going to go to my tabs and just drag one of my tabs over, my lower tab, to close up that space. I'm also going to use our Futura text. And let's I'll bold that. Oops. Okay, so that. Okay, my bulleted list fits right in there. I'm moving it over just so that it looks good. It balances out the layout. Oops. Okay, so a few further refinements. Maybe I'll adjust the position of this logo to give my list a little bit more room. Another thing that I can do to refine the text is I can put some tracking on this, some negative tracking to close up the spaces between the letters. So if I select my text and go to Format, Font, Advanced, go to Spacing. Spacing by default is normal. If I choose Condensed, and I get a preview here of what 1 point condensed would look like. Let's see. Okay, so if I put 2 points of condensed tracking on that, or negative tracking, it closes up my letter spacing a little bit. I'm going to do the same for some of these others. This is something that you want to do, just kind of look at individually and see what will work. If I wanted to increase the letter spacing for some reason, I go to Expand, and I can try that. Depends on the amount, how many points. This is 10 points. It's quite expanded. Go to Condensed, and you can type in a negative, like a -1 or negative, let's try -10. Let's try, that's a little bit much. Let's try -6. Oops. Oh, I see. Okay. That's a little bit tight for my taste. I'll go back and do a point. So you can even do a point. Let me do a 0.4 and see what happens. Okay, that's a little bit nicer. Same thing with the logo, or logo type. Put some negative tracking on that. Okay, just helps it a little bit. It just refines our typography just a bit, makes it look a little bit more professional. Makes it look like we've put some thought into the individual letter spacing. One last thing that I'd like to do is to make our title stand out a little bit more from the background so that it has some more visual impact. So I'm going to select my text, choose shadow. I've got a preset in here. If I click the down arrow, I've got some different options here. Let me go ahead and try this first one. I get a nice drop shadow on my text. So if we zoom out just a little bit, we have a fairly nice looking flyer. So we've already saved our flyer to our Word folder inside the assignment folder. So we've already done a save as. So we've already done an initial save as for our flyer inside of our Word folder. So all I have to do now to save my final design is to press Command S to save, and that's a keyboard shortcut. You could go to File, Save as well. And we're all finished with our lesson flyer.